Hi, and welcome to Deep Leadership. I'm your host, John Rennie. Well, what can a professional basketball player teach us about leadership? Well, quite a lot. Angela Lewis is a former player, championship winning coach, and head of operations at SpeakerHUB. In this episode, she shares her powerful 6V framework to help you bounce back from setbacks and lead with clarity and confidence. This conversation is fast paced, insightful, and packed with the real world lessons that you can apply to your leadership role today. So if you're looking to turn your setback into a comeback, this is your episode. So are you ready to dive in? Let's get started. Today, I'm joined by Angela Lewis. Angela is a former professional basketball player, championship winning coach, and head of operations at SpeakerHUB, a global platform that helps speakers grow their visibility and influence. Drawing from over 2 decades of experience in sports, education, and entrepreneurship, Angela now empowers elite performers to lead with clarity, communicate with confidence, and bounce forward from life's toughest setbacks. She is also the author of multiple books and the creator of the 6V framework for personal and professional growth. And I am excited to have her on the show to learn from her experience. So, Angela, welcome to the show.
John, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited about this conversation.
Oh, I am as well too. I love the sports analogy, and I'm really curious to learn from you and your experience and how that sort of set the foundation for your leadership experience and your leadership perspective. So, first of all, let's dive into it. How has your experience as a professional athlete and a coach influenced your leadership style in both business and everything else you do?
Well, I am 6'1". I've been this tall since I was 12 years old.
Wow.
And so that kind of started my entry into sport and my understanding of what it means to be a leader and being around leaders who are pushing us toward a particular goal. And so what I learned in my earliest experiences are competitiveness, having a desire to push more, but also to listen. I think so much of leadership that we often miss is the willingness to listen to the people that you're leading and being able to address every person in a unique way based on who they are and knowing their personalities in order to get the best out of them. And so
Mm.
today I do the same thing with our team at SpeakerHUB. It's listening. We have a global team, so there's people from all over the world. Sometimes I have to swap into Spanish and English because most of our all of our team is bilingual. And so being able to listen, to know what people need, and to meet people where they are is critical to move organizations and teams forward.
Yeah, it's really interesting. One of the things I was thinking about when you're talking about that is you know, a great coach is going to listen to the players, and they're going to get insight from, hey, did you see what this player did? Or, and so I think a great coach is going to listen to like the ideas from the players. So is that similar in your sports analogy where you're sort of listening to maybe insights from a player that a coach maybe might have missed, because the players are in the game and they see, oh, when she does this, this happens. And so this, let's watch out for that type of thing. Did you learn that from sports?
Definitely. The feedback from players makes a big difference because, like you said, they're the ones who are out there on the court. And so knowing that players have the the ability to, if you teach your players how to read the game and if they really buy into your strategy and desire to win, then they're going to offer feedback that is valuable to the team. And
Hmm.
similarly in business, we have daily meetings, and someone gave a suggestion on a call recently. And she said, well, how about instead of you calling on the next person for us to share feedback from the day before, how about we just pass it to our teammates? So now the meetings are more fluid opposed to a bit more rigid. And so we take the feedback, and when it's helpful and useful, then you implement it because it makes everyone better. And players and people on your team want to feel heard.
Yeah. Yeah. What? So, if as our listeners are thinking about this and in their sort of trying in their minds, sort of thinking through sports and business, what are some of these similarities and maybe some of the differences between sports coaching and business leadership?
Well, the biggest difference, I'll start with the difference, is the bottom line. So we're
Yeah.
business, you're driving revenue and you need revenue to sustain the business. On the sports side, you're obviously trying to get wins, and depending on the level, you're driving revenue as well. But Um, Similarities, you are corralling a group of people toward the same vision. You have players in different positions, and you're always trying to figure out if this person in the right seat. Are they playing to their strengths? I mean, with SpeakerHUB, we've moved people around because we were able to see that, oh, well, they're actually better in this role,
Mm.
in a different role, whether it was from the marketing team to a more technical side. So I think those are some similarities. Differences are obviously bottom line. And you're paying, well, today you're paying athletes too in college, but you're actually hiring. So you're going out to pick your team and you're trying to find the best talent that's going to help move your business forward.
Yeah, yeah, I see that. Yeah, and we were talking before we pressed record. There's so many eyes on you as the coach in terms of like your performance. Like it's you can't hide from your performance. And I think and same thing in business as well too. So even if you're doing everything right and you're not making money, you're not gonna last as a business leader. You're not gonna last as a coach if you put together winning seasons, right?
Exactly.
You can have a bad season, but if you do that over and over, you're not gonna have a job very long. Yeah.
Exactly. Winning is the whole point of the game. I
Yeah.
understand that some people play for fun, but we're trying to win. I was definitely about them. I said, no, we're going to win. You're going to learn some things, but yeah, winning is still important.
Yeah. Well, one thing I see in the similarities in the military, in my experience,
Hmm.
and in sports is that like the goal is clear. Like our mission in the military was clear. We knew what we were going to do. And I think in a sports, you kind of know, our goal is to win the championship maybe or win our division. So the goals
Hmm.
is like pretty obvious. And what I noticed when I went into corporate, I worked 22 years in three global companies, is that the goal wasn't always clear. Like given any particular day, it was like, oh, we want to reduce scrap, or we want to improve customer responsiveness. We was always seemed like it was a different goal. We increase profitability. We want to reduce inventory. It's all about cash flow. And so I was always like, coming out of the military into corporate, I was always confused, like, what's the mission? What's the goal? And so I think one of the things I like about the military and sports is like there's clarity in the goal, right?
There is clarity in the goal. Part of it is the teams are way smaller. There
Mm,
are less leaders. You don't have necessarily middle management, on in a sports team in the same way that you do in business. And I think by and large in sports, and I'm not familiar with military as much, but in sport, the rules don't change. There aren't
mm,
many forces that are going to shift the whole game. So you can say pretty you can stay in the sport for years and things will change. The rules of the game, rarely do they actually change, but in business, things change all the time.
mm.
Customers change, a new competitor comes into the market, things happen on your team. I just feel like there's a lot more variability in business versus like a sports team at, depending on the level of the team.
Yeah, that's great insight. So, with a sports team, you start the season, you sort of all know the rules, of the game, and so the teams are established. And obviously there's, throughout the season, there's going to be injuries, there's going to be
Hmm.
players are picked up, and so suddenly there's one team that to beat, so things do change, but I think you're right. In business, it seems like it's changing so
All the
fast
time.
all the
Especially
time.
today with
Yeah.
technology, it changes everything. Everything
Yeah.
changes. And in sport, there's a beginning and an end to a season, and there's a fresh start. In business, I know there's quarterly reports and, monthly reports, but you don't have that same, okay, this is over. We get to take a break. There's recovery time. There's no recovery time in business. Like it never stops.
It never stops. There's no off season, right?
No,
Yeah.
no. The
Yeah,
off
that's
season of your
true.
business, taking off season and the business is over.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. That is true. It's continuous. That's why sometimes people struggle with, work-life balance, because they just sort of in the grind, they keep grinding. They don't ever have that sort of like break, you don't, it doesn't end. Like there
No.
isn't like, even if you make the numbers, like I remember I used to always say as a plant manager when I first started running manufacturing plants, was the best day in a plant manager's life was the day after he made all his numbers. The end of the month, he made all his numbers or her numbers. The worst day was the next morning. because you had to do it all over again,
Have to
right?
do it all over. Yes,
So
yes. And
yeah,
then get better.
and you get
So there's
better.
that constant push to
Yeah.
increase more productivity or output. Yeah.
We used to say they would turn up the treadmill every year. They would just turn it up just a little bit,
Hmm.
just see if you can get a little bit better. So yeah, yeah, no, it's yeah. So I think you're right. There are some obviously some critical differences, but one area that you talk about is communication. So how important is communications in high performing teams, high performing individuals? How does communication play a role in leadership?
Communication's critical. There's nonverbal and verbal. And then we have virtual teams and in-person teams. And so given the way that we work today, it's even more important to be intentional about the ways in which we communicate, the channels in which we communicate, and how we stay connected to to our teams and the people that we work with. So clarity is key, like we talked about in business. Sometimes things just aren't clear. So as leaders, being as clear as possible about what the goals are and the outcomes we're looking to achieve. The second thing is actually being available to communicate. Availability creates a level of trust and closeness. And then third, being willing to listen. Oftentimes, communication, we think about talking, but
Mm.
listening is just as important, if not more important, to make sure that the people who you're working with as a leader actually understand the vision. And if not, you can reiterate what the vision is and how their role is a part of that.
Yeah, and so with your business and what you do, you mentioned earlier you've got, employees all over the world essentially. And so how do you ensure good communication when maybe the only time you ever meet is virtually? So how do you
We Yeah, we only meet virtually. I mean,
yeah.
we very rare occasionally we're in the same place, but not because of business. It's usually someone is traveling to that country or city. We have meetings every morning, so we know when we're going to see each other. We use multiple different tools such as WhatsApp, such as Google Chat, email. We hop on phone calls. We have one-on-ones if there's something mission critical that we need to handle in that moment. So we're intentional about it, but then also we understand that we have to have set times to communicate. And we're not perfect. We don't always get it right, but we try to make sure that everyone knows when they can expect to have that direct communication.
Yeah, you mentioned nonverbals, and I think it's kind of interesting. So, in my experience, I'm curious to know if it's similar in the sports world, but like in the military, so we trained with the same group of people over and over again, doing the same type of drills all the time. So we almost instinctively knew what each other was thinking at all times. So when we ran to battle stations, there was 15 officers, and the 15 officers took very key roles in battle stations. But the 15 of us knew each other so well that we knew almost instinctively what each other was thinking. So a
Mhm.
lot of like nonverbal cues, like a little wink, a smile, and we knew exactly what was going to be the next step. Is that similar in sports?
Yes, the chemistry. Ah, that's like the best part when you have run the play over and over again in your mind and you see where everyone is going to go and everyone knows their position and their role. It is beautiful. I think, teams like Golden State Warriors get it right. Unfortunately, they got knocked out of the playoffs, but they're a team where you can just see and feel the chemistry
Yeah.
through the screen. And so chemistry makes a big difference. And those nonverbal cues allows things to move faster and cement trust with teammates.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have you found in your working in business, have you ever gotten to a point where you have that kind of chemistry in business teams?
Oh, that's such a good question.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking I've had some experiences like that, but they're very few and far between when everything sort of gels like it does, like in my military experience. But it's always seems like it's a rare, like maybe it's a crisis situation, maybe it was something that we were taking on a competitor, some sort of very special event, but it never lasted. It was always like a short-lived period. I don't know if you had a similar experience.
Oh, I'm gonna have to think. I'm gonna have to think about that.
Yeah,
I think when people know their roles, then we know who's going to do what. So we had
yeah,
an event last October, and we had it was a crisis situation, right? We
Yeah,
needed
yeah,
all hands on deck to fix this problem with the videos uploading, and it didn't work. And we had to download them and then re-upload them to YouTube and reconnect it to the platform that we were hosting the event. And people hopped in and just took care of it. And but we had to talk about it. So I think in a virtual environment, it's a bit more challenging to have that same level of nonverbal communication that moves people to action as it does when you're face to face and doing something very physical.
yeah, yeah. I think you're probably right there. Yeah, again, it's interesting too. Is crisis is something that brings people together. So when, like, I always feel like in my military and in my business experience, where we stood shoulder to shoulder with a team in a tough time, like we built some
Hmm.
bonds because we were facing sort of adversity together. And I think
Yes,
that so those are the times I would say that maybe the chemistry was best in my experience, just in business. When things got tough and we were all sort of like, okay, well, we're in it together. We got to figure like my I ran a company in the middle of the pandemic, right? So we were a small company, but we survived. We at the end of the day we were still in business, where a lot of businesses didn't survive. So I mean, it was sort of
very
like
true.
we felt like together we went through the gauntlet and we came out the other side. So we built a tight bond during that time.
That's
Yeah,
really special.
yeah,
And I think as you say that, John, it makes me realize how much we take for granted when nothing's wrong.
right,
Like when something is wrong, we all like rally together and there's this rush of adrenaline to figure it out. But oftentimes that's not the case. And oftentimes things are actually running pretty smoothly. And so we take for granted the ways that we can build deeper connections when nothing's wrong.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
that stood out for me. I'm gonna get
Yeah, no,
better
I
at
think
that.
we build some common, like we build a common connection when we have these common shared, tough experiences, and so we build
Agreed.
we bond a little bit more. But let's talk a little bit about the 6V framework for personal and professional growth. Tell us a little bit about that and kind of what inspired you to put that together.
The 6V framework is a framework to go from valley to victory, and then back to the valley, and then back to victory, because that's how life is. There's high points and low points and high points, and it's a never ending cycle. And so the 6V framework actually came when I was an assistant women's basketball coach at Southeast Missouri State University. And I was asked to speak to a group of high school students who were on campus for a college tour. So the night before the speech, I was literally just praying about what am I going to talk to them about. And then this was placed on my heart. And so the 6V framework is you start in the valley. And in the valley is when we have to pause to evaluate what's going on and really ask those hard questions. How did I get here? Like, how did I get in this tough situation? Whether it's an injury, maybe it's an issue with clients, maybe sales aren't going well. Like, you have to get clear about how you got there. So you're in the valley. How did you get there? And then we need a vision of where we actually want to be. So here's how we start to climb out of that valley. Where do we want to be? Okay. We're clear that we are trying to get healthy and recover from the injury, or we're clear that we're trying to win the next game, or we're clear that we're trying to make more sales. Cool. We get to the point of the vision, and then we need to know the values that it takes to get there. So it's one thing to say I want to get there, but it's another thing to say, all right, here's what I have to change. Maybe we need just more sales appointments, more sales calls in order to get to that vision. So change our values and then find those voices of people who've been to where we're going.
Mm,
So we're in the valley, we get our vision, we understand the values, and then we need help. You have to ask for help. Getting out of the valley is not something you want to go at alone. You have to do the work. Now, let me be clear, no one can do your work for you. We
yeah.
have to do the work. However, if we can find the voices of people, the strategies of other people, we can get out of the valleys faster. So we get those voices after the vision. We start telling ourselves something different. So the voice that we speak to ourselves has to change. And then from there, we start sharing what we know. So this volunteering. So volunteering isn't necessarily about like going to a food shelter. It's really about learn what you've learned, teaching your team. As a leader, my responsibility to help us come out of the valley is to learn something new that's going to help our team grow. So you're volunteering to share what you've learned to get to that point of victory. Now, victory isn't really the end, it's actually a new starting point. And when you get to that point of victory, your responsibility is then to track what you did to get out of that valley because another one's coming, either for you or someone else. And then you'll be able to help them get out of that valley as well and reach the point of victory. And then you slide on back down to another valley, get a new vision, understand the values, the voices, volunteer, reach the point of victory. And it is ongoing forever.
Yeah,
So that's the
yeah.
6V framework.
I really like that. I like that because I think, if I look back at my business, career, if you will, is like you do have these valleys that you fall into, whether some of it is externally related, the economy slows, something happens, and so maybe you're running at, victory, so you're running at your peak, and then something happens that sort of the rug gets taken out from underneath you, and so now you're down in the valley, and so things have changed, right? And
Yes.
so you're like, okay. And I love what you say here. That's, you sort of pause and you say, all right, how did I get here, right? and
Yes.
and I think that's really important, because I think unless you understand how you got in the valley in the first place, you really don't really can't really set the sort of plan to kind of get out of that valley. So I do like that approach. You talked about vision being next, sort of where we want to be. So what would that what are some visions if you're in the valley? How should a visit is a vision sort of super inspirational? Is it meant to be sort of like what's a vision look like when you're saying, okay, I'm in the valley and I'm thinking about how do I get out? So how do
That's a
we,
really great question. It's
yeah,
what is the next step?
what's the next
Not
step?
not what is this grand vision. It's
Yeah.
how do I get a little bit better? Because the
Okay.
valley is where the learning takes place. And
Yes.
rarely are you going to be able to go from the valley all the way to the point of the big vision of where you want to go without all of these little steps. So you have to be able to chart a path of baby steps and celebrate those little wins to get out of there. And it could just be making that phone call that you didn't want to make. It could be sending that email. It could be, if you're on a sports team specifically, it could just be going in and shooting 100 free throws a day for the next week to get your rhythm back,
Yeah.
to get you out of the valley, to help you prepare for the next competition. So it's the
Yeah.
the vision doesn't have to be something grandiose. It needs to
Yeah.
just be what's the next best step.
What's the next best step? I love that. Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the things you just said is really important too. Is valley is where the learning takes place. I love that. So I think, the middle of a crisis, the middle of a problem, is where your character is developed, right? And so
Yes,
it's that's going to help you in the future, right? And you may not like it at the time that you're in a valley, right? But it's where you're going to develop your most amount of character for the next time it happens, right? And
exactly.
yeah, I often tell people that, people say, well, how, it's hard to start a business, because I started a business 9 years ago. I say, yeah, it's hard, but it's never as hard as what life on a submarine was. Like, so once you've had that valley in your life, everything else seems easy compared to it, right? It's like, I overcame that difficulty in my life. I can overcome anything, type of thing. So I think the deeper the valley, I think the deeper the experience, and when you come out of it, I think you're much stronger for the rest of your life.
100%. And John, you said something that triggered a thought for me. You said, well, I was on a submarine for 9 years.
Just five.
No,
Yeah. But
five.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
submarine for 5 years. So when you're in that valley, what the business isn't, you started the business 9 years ago.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
But when you're in a submarine for 5 years, and so what we can do also when we're in the valley is think about someone else's story to give us context, to see, well,
Yeah.
is this so bad? And
Yeah.
if they made it through, then I can make it through as well. And use that and use someone else's next step. So the valley isn't always about like us having to figure it out. As I mentioned, we have the voices of people who've been there, but also the stories of people who've come before us. For example, my mom was born in 1941 in Marigold, Mississippi. And so her life was very different. And she literally picked cotton. Like my aunts and uncles and grandparents were sharecroppers. Like there's probably nothing I'm going to go through that's that bad. And
Yeah.
so it gives context, you need context to the valleys as well, which helps you push through to the next step.
I love that. Sometimes we're in the valley. It's woe is me. Look at me. How terrible is my life? And so it's all about me. So we're looking
Mm-hmm.
at ourselves and we're having this self pity. We're having a pity party. But if you say like just shifting your perspective, read a book about someone who has gone through some difficult times. Think about, if, as you mentioned, family members, people that have come before you. Have that voice. Talk to somebody that's been through these tough
Yeah.
times, and then suddenly you're like, oh, my life isn't bad at all. This problem is not that bad at all. And I
Yeah.
think that does gives us perspective, right, to help us sort of realize that maybe our problems aren't as big as we think they are. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. And we still have to do the work. So just knowing that my mom's situation was much more challenging than mine doesn't mean that it won't be hard for me to do the work to
Yeah.
get to whatever goal and move out of the valley. You still have to do
Yes.
the work, but you can do it with a different context.
Yeah. Yeah. You still have to do the work. Yeah. I think
Yes.
that's sometimes where people struggle with is sort of, they say, oh, maybe they've gotten out of shape, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they're like, I got a vision, I want to get back in shape. And maybe they do a bunch of research and they trying to find out the best diet, the best exercise plan. They keep researching, and researching, and it's like the only way it's going to change is for you to take action, right? you
I
know
mean, I may or may not have been one of those people that looked up how to lose 20 pounds in a week. I may or may not have been that person. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't matter. You can read it for hours and listen to it for 20 hours. You still have to not eat the chocolate croissants and
yeah.
still have to lift the weight, still have to do the work.
Yeah, being a guy, former Navy guy, one of the things I realized is that you can't steer a boat unless it's moving, right? So
Ooh,
if a boat is stationary, you can steer the rudder all day long and nothing happens. So you've got to get the boat moving first, and then you can steer the rudder. And I think that's similar to this analogy. You got to take action, right? You got to, if you're going to
that's
steer
it.
yourself in a new direction, you got to at least be moving to be able to get that new direction, right?
You have to move in the direction of where you want to go. And that
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's going to happen fast. Sometimes I know I talked about Valley to Victory as if it's this linear, really fast process, but it's not.
Mm,
It could take years to get basketball, for instance. When I started, I was really bad. I
mm.
hadn't played organized basketball before. I hadn't played on a team. I never run a play. I never run up and down a court for hours and hours on end. So it was hard to develop the skill, but you can get better. If you can
Mm.
give yourself enough grace and enough time to get better, then things can change.
I love that message. That's fantastic. Yeah, you're right. If you give yourself enough time, enough grace, you can, through work, achieve and overcome very difficult situations. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. This is fantastic, Angela. The 6V framework, I think, is very important, and it gives us something to think about. What final message would you like to leave with our listeners?
The final message I would like to leave is listen more and show grace to others. I mean, I think especially given the world today, we need a lot more joy and love and peace. So your presence matters, your voice matters. And if you can show up with the joy, the love, the peace, that radiates to the people around you in ways that you actually may never, ever know. So it's very important.
I love that. Leaders, your attitude is contagious. So show up in the right way, influence people in the right way, and then be infectious with your joy. I love that. It's such a great message, Angela. I absolutely love that. How can our listeners find out more about you, all of your books, and any of the services you offer?
You can find out more about me at angelarlewis.com, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Angela R. Lewis, Instagram, the Angela R. Lewis, or you can email me at info@angelarlewis.com. I would love to connect.
Absolutely. We're going to put links in the show notes for all of Angela's resources. And again, if something in this conversation really sparked interest to you, if you want to find out more about the 6V framework, you want to be able to figure out how to apply it maybe in your life or in your business or in your particular situation, reach out to Angela. She's the one, she's the expert. She's developed it. She's thought through this. If you're trying to figure out like how does sports, sort of how do I apply some of the lessons from sports into my business and my leadership, yeah, Angela's the expert. She's the one you want to talk to. I've never played professional basketball. She has. So she's the person to talk to. She's coached the teams. So she's the one you want to talk to. So So reach out to her. Links are in the show notes. Reach out to her, and you're going to learn more. You'll be able to be more successful by having a chance to reach out to Angela. So I encourage you to do that. Angela, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing your insight on leadership and sort of this perspective that you give that's highly unique. So I thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, John. I appreciate your thoughtful questions and really enjoyed this conversation.
I did as well. Thank you. Well, that is it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.